Hey fellow hobbyists, this is Keelan from Keys Minis and welcome to today's video. Today is just kind of a guide for Prince Duval's red armour that I'm going to do. This is the method that I'm using to paint it. It's not such a tutorial as it's just the way I'm approaching it and how I'm getting that red that I want. Now I've used this method across, I'm going to be using this method across all the 4 models, even the big guy with the mace. I know you tend to see him painted with black armour. But I really want to have these in a red colour, and it's going to be the theme for my Soul Blights in general, the army I'm hopefully to build. This is because I'm painting a lot of black armour with Anvils of Eldar, so I don't want to be a clash when we play games on the table. The method's very simple. Now I base coated all the armour with a mix of Mephiston red off camera. Now this is entirely up to you. I used a red primer spray anyway, so I didn't need to necessarily do this method, and I kind of just added an extra layer to do more work really. But if you want to do an alternate version of this mix, which I'll mention as I get to the next stage, then this probably would be better for you to do just a quick layer of Mephiston red all over the armour. So the first stage is a 1.1 mix of Renoxide with Mephiston red. Now I kind of lent a bit too much to the red hue at first, and I'm going to leave this mistake in because as I was painting it, I realised it wasn't dark enough. I completed all that coat on that armour, and then I went with a 2.1 mix, kind of more of the 2.1 mix to Renoxide to Mephiston red. And again, just painted all the armour pieces with this. Now this gave me a lot of a darker tone. The hue was a lot more to the brown, which meant that when I went to highlight stages, I could really make the highlights pop into that red colour. An alternative method of this is, like I said, paint a layer of Mephiston red at the beginning, and you can use Agrax Earthshade, 2 thin layers of Agrax Earthshade to get a kind of a similar tone as the Renoxide one as well. I've done this on Blood Angels in the past and it comes out fairly well. It's quicker, it can be a quicker method, but I think it leaves it a little bit too patchy if you don't thin the wash out enough. Stage simple is I'm going to then just place the model kind of under my light and just see where the light really hits it. Especially now you've got that dark tone, you can see some of these light points a lot more. And I'm just going to trace them in with a coat of Mephiston red on those highlight points. After that stage, I'm going to do a 1.1 mix of Mephiston red and Evilsun Scarlet. Now I'm just going to try and hit a smaller patch of those layers to really make the highlights pop. From there I went with a 1.1 mix of Evilsun Scarlet to Wild Rider Red, And again, this is just creating a smaller highlight to now really draw out that kind of reddy orange tone in the highlights you want. You could also just skip to Wild Rider Red as a highlight on its own here, but I like to just build the layers up a little bit more, as I just think it adds more depth to those layers. From here I wanted to blend all the tones together, so I went with a 1.1 mix of Mephiston Red and Ronoxide, which is just to go back to that kind of bassy tone, and then just draws in all those blends together a little bit more. I then went back to another layer of Wild Rider Red and just started to point out those highlights again. This is just, with that blend together, I just think it adds a nicer hue to the model, and it just makes those highlights pop out a little bit more. Then I went with a 1.1 mix of Wild Rider Red to Vallejo White, but you could easily use White Scar White as well. And all you're going to do, again, trace in little, really tiny areas now, like kind of the points of the armour, and then a little line across certain sections, just to draw it out a little bit more. Another method you could use as well here as well after is, as you're doing this part, while you're waiting for it to dry, is get Ronoxide and go into the shadow areas and paint like in between the eyes on the front of the armour, and just paint in between those, get that to be a lot darker tone. And then under any of the armour parts where you're highlighting, he's got quite a few bit of he's got quite a few pieces where armour overlaps onto another piece, so you can create some nice shadows on that, under those there too. And then final stage, you could either just add a 2.1 mix of white to Wild Rider Red if you don't want to go too bright, or just straight white if you want, and all you're going to then do is pick out the dots of the armour. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's just my guide, it's not a tutorial as such, it's just a guide for how I painted the red for Duval's armour. I'm still finishing the model. I'm challenging myself to try non-metallic metal. I'll probably post an update so you can see all these 4 models once they're done. I did kind of a different tone on Veles, on her armour. I went more with a red hue on that 1.1 mix of Ronoxide to Mephiston Red, and this is where I learned that I wanted to go a little bit darker on the hue with Prince Duval. Another tip you can do is also go and check, if you're going to use the red armour, kind of like I did, go and have a look on the GW website and look at the 360 degree of the model, and you can also, to make your job a little bit easier, you can look where GW artists actually put the highlights as well. It's a really good method if you want to. My hand isn't as steady as theirs, so my patterns are not going to be as neat or as precise, but I haven't been painting as long, so that's a good method as well if you want to see where some of the highlights are, if you haven't taken a photo before or you haven't put the model up there. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification button to stay up to date with future videos. Next week I'll be back with a video on, it's the MIG test. I was going to do it this week, but it's the MIG ammo streaking rust test. That will be out next week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.